everybody. Welcome back to Adobe Illustrator for Cartographers. I'm Dr. Heath Robinson, and this lesson I want to show you a couple of techniques in importing hand-drawn maps into Illustrator to improve. It's very, very common in GIS, also in cartography, to have situations where someone has annotated a map by hand, and they want you to either put that information that's been added by hand into a GIS analysis, or to make the map look much better using your computer software than it looked by hand. It can also be the case that you receive maps that have been completely hand-drawn. This is especially the case in field research, especially in archaeology. I remember when I was working in an archaeology lab, there were lots and lots and lots of maps that came in of the archaeological site that the field archaeologists had drawn by hand while they were out in the field. And of course, they have very precise ways to do this and record information in the field, but there were just these stacks and stacks of hundreds of hand-drawn maps. And so we had to bring them into Adobe Illustrator and vectorize them and make them look very pretty. So it's very common to have that happen, and I want to show you a couple of things that you can do inside Illustrator to accomplish those tasks. Even though Illustrator is vector-based, it's a vector art program, it will allow you to bring in pictures. This is definitely good because there are many situations where you might want to bring in some kind of picture, some kind of JPEG or other raster file format. Not only is it the case that you can take somebody's hand-drawn map, scan it, and then bring it into Illustrator, but we could certainly think of lots of situations where we're trying to produce some very nice poster maps, and we want to have different photographs of different areas around the edge of the map. We certainly may want to have that, and so it's very nice that Illustrator, although it's based in vector, will allow you to import raster images. Let me just show you how to do that. I've got a hand-drawn map. I just printed something out and drew some things on it as an example. Let me show you how to bring it into Illustrator. Also, you will notice that I created a new layer called Hand-Drawn Map in order to stick this hand-drawn map in. So if you go to File and then Place, File and then Place, you can find some kind of raster image like this hand-drawn map I've got right here and click on Place. And it's going to ask me to draw a box to put this map in. So I'm just going to draw a box right here in the center in that layer. And now I've got a scan of this hand-drawn map. I just printed out the basic line work of the area that I've been drawing and then took a marker and shaded in some forest there in green and put in a place where a naval base is and a diving area and then also maybe some restricted waters and a trade channel there and an area that's fishing waters. So you can certainly see a situation where somebody has drawn some information on a map like this and you want to clean it up. Now exactly what you do to this is going to depend on how much leeway you have as the cartographer to choose how things are depicted, how accurately it was drawn in the first place, and so forth. But the techniques that we're talking about here are just the same. Since this is my area, it's going to be important to line this up. Obviously, it would be very much easier if I had all of this information geo-registered and I was able to geo-register this JPEG. This is just a JPEG that I created when I scanned this information. So if I were inside an analytical GIS package, I could certainly assign this JPEG coordinates and have it geo-registered. But if you're doing cartography in Illustrator, your base Illustrator package does not include any capability for geo-registration or anything like that. So unfortunately, you're not going to have that ability when just working in straight Illustrator. So, what can you do? Hopefully, if you've got the line work like I do here, I probably want to slide that. Probably what I would do is turn off a bunch of stuff, but then try to... There's my baseland. This may take resizing. Oh, by chance, I may have gotten rather close. This may take resizing. This is going to take positioning different objects, slowly going through and manipulating the scan so that it lays right where it's supposed to lay. Like I said, this is not a great way to do this. If I had geo-registration capabilities, I would much prefer to do that rather than trying to eyeball this into the correct position. But it may be the case that if you've really got some free-form hand-drawn information, like it looks like I've got here, and I just free-handed this in, then it may be a situation where you don't need just incredible accuracy, depending on what it is that you're bringing in here. What I wanted to do, let me just for the heck of it turn that off so I can try anyway. To align this. It also looks like I'm turned a little bit. That's pretty close, and will do for the point of this example. Since I knew that the hand-drawn map was made from the same line work, I knew it would match up. So I've just free-handed it. I'll say once again, having geo-registration capabilities would be much easier, but then what you do is you lock that hand-drawn map. I just keep, anytime I put in a JPEG like that or any kind of raster, I only put one per layer and then I lock it as soon as it gets in. Now if I were trying to vectorize it, because I don't want that on my map. I want to make sure that I've got a very nice, very clean vectorization. Well, I'll call it forest. Maybe I'm trying to vectorize the forest. Where there is forest area. Well, then I just grab some kind of tool, and depending on how accurate this was drawn anyway, I can just grab a pencil tool or some other kind of tool and just start tracing over. So I created a new layer and I locked that image, and then I can come through here and I can just draw around. I have traced a lot of different stuff in my day. This was a major part of the cartography in the archaeological laboratory. There, now I've got this forest. But I could do lots more. I could make it look much better. That's a basic way to trace over a hand-drawn map. Maybe this trade channel right here. Try to do my best. If it's important, you may end up with a lot of leeway to produce the line. But if it's important that it goes right over it, you could try to use the pencil tool to make sure that it's nice and smooth. Maybe it would look better if you brought out the Bezier curves and did it and so forth. Maybe this is what needs to be done with that arrow. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Maybe that's the trade channel. That's basically it. That's the basics of hand vectorizing some kind of hand-drawn map. Let me warn you, just in general, about these different raster images that you might break in. It is very, very important that these rasters, if you're going to include one, whether it's a JPEG that's a photo or if it's a hand-drawn something that's going to be on the final map, I would never put a hand-drawn anything on the final map. But anytime you're trying to put a JPEG, especially something like a photo, onto a finished map, it's exceedingly important to make sure that it's high resolution. Many people don't realize this, that screen resolution is rather low resolution. Sometimes it will only be 72 dots per inch. And if you're just trying to scan something to vectorize it over or trace over it, then scanning it at 72 dpi is no problem. But when you start to print something, it can begin to look pixelated, it will look blurred, it will not look crisp because it hasn't been exported properly for printing. You want to be, if you're trying to do some kind of photo or some type of raster, anything that's going to actually be on the final map, you need to make sure that it is at least 250 dpi when it's scanned. I would prefer to say 300. You get above that, most printers aren't going to be able to print better than that anyway. You're just going to be driving your file size up. But if you're scanning it yourself and you know this is some kind of image, some kind of picture that has got to be on the final map, make sure that it is a high resolution picture. That way it will not look grainy, it will not look fuzzy, and you won't get compression artifacts. Well, actually, if you're using a lossy compression with your raster, things like JPEGs, which actually lose information. I would never put a JPEG on my final map. We're not really talking about compression technologies and so forth in here, but there are different raster formats that lose information in order to get a smaller file size, and those are called lossy compression techniques. And there are other things like TIFF files, which have no compression whatsoever and preserve all of the information. If you're really trying to put a good high-quality raster image on your final map, I would do a high-resolution scan TIFF, and I wouldn't even worry with JPEGs. If you're just trying to trace something over like I've got here, then a low-resolution JPEG scan will be just fine, because it's not going to be on the final map anyway. But please keep that in mind. People get surprised because they're looking at it on the screen and it looks fine because it's just screen resolution, and then they don't check it, they don't make a draft map, they don't print it off as a draft to check how it looks. They print off their final map, and what they have is very low resolution JPEGs. It doesn't look very good, it does not look professional, and it's another one of those dead giveaways that you're looking at an amateur cartographer if the images that they have on their map are not high resolution or have compression artifacts from using compression. Please, please, please be aware of that. Let me show you one other thing. I could go around and I could keep tracing things, but I think you've got the idea. Put the image in there that you want to trace on one layer, exactly where it's supposed to go, lock it, then trace over it.